In this task, we'll get a sense of what is a profile and what are constraints. Let's start with a new model, and first of all, we want the triad of axes to be displayed. In System Options, Reference System, we tick the Show item. We are in the model environment. In fact, if we rotate dynamically, we see the triad of axes rotate. Let's go back to the work plan view. Let's make a zoom window now, because we are going to draw with the classic approach of 2D drafting, which means we draw geometries directly with the size of the design, as in this case a rectangle, where we enter 15 for X and 15 for Y, and we position it in the work plane origin. Then we add a circle, center in the midpoint of the top line up to the end point. By the Smart Delete command, we delete the exceeding parts to obtain our final shape. So far everything is alright. However, if we make some changes, for instance by modify entities, we are able to modify, yes we are, but only the length and angle of that single line. Similarly, as for the arc, we can change the radius, but we just modify the arc. In the same way, moving the line on the right moves the single line. In other terms, these entities are 4 separate entities. Ideally, while saving the model, we should have these entities grouped in a unique entity. Therefore, we select them. We activate the 2D Profile tab, and these entities have been converted to a profile. If we move dynamically by a double click on the point, we notice that the line is modified, but also the arc is modified. Similarly, if we drag the vertical line on the right, we see that both the bottom line and the arc stretch and shorten. We capture the point at the bottom right, we take it and drag it. The two lines connected at the point are free to move, angle, and stretch. Then we define some geometrical rules. That's why we insert some geometric constraints, in this case of orientation. We say that that line will have to be horizontal, and these other two lines will have to be vertical. Now, if we try again and move dynamically, these dynamic movements are very important because they make us understand how the profile behaves. We notice that the lines stretch and shorten, but they don't angle, in line with the geometric constraints introduced so far, that is, to be vertical and to be horizontal. However, the arc still creates an edge. That's why we are inserting a tangency constraint between the arc and each line. By checking the profile, the command shows in different colors which are the entities well defined, the ones under constraint, and the one over constraint of inconsistent. Let's move dynamically again. We see that our geometry is still free to resize, therefore we don't have yet any dimensions fixing sizes. To retrieve the information about what is a constraint, we just need to select Single Entity Info, and ThinkDesign displays the type of constraints and also highlights the entity linked to this constraint. Let's insert the geometric constraints. This corresponds to add dimensions to the vertical line, the horizontal line, and the arc. In this case, ThinkDesign displays a warning message stating that the profile is overdefined and inconsistent. Let's check the profile then. Marked in red, we see the inconsistent entities. In brown, the two entities between which there is a conflict, and it's the 2 dimensions. In actual fact, at this step the designer decides whether using the dimension of the arc or the bottom one. We cancel the bottom dimension, and in this case we are going to change to set the value of our dimension so 70 for the height and 30 for the radius. Here we have created our profile starting from curves and converting these curves to a profile. Now we cancel what we've done. Let's create directly in profile environment our shape with a so-called sketcher approach. Therefore, we actually make a sketch of the shape we want by the polyline command. Then we move from line mode to tangent arc mode. The program already inserts the geometric constraints, detecting them during the construction. So vertical lines because we sketch them vertical. The arc already put the tangency constraint and so on. Let's focus now on dimensions. Therefore, let's insert some dimensional constraints setting the desired value for the dimension. 40, the height, and 30, the radius. Let's check the profile once more. We notice there are still some green entities, but there are still 2 degrees of freedom. What does it mean? Let's try to move our profile dynamically. Geometries don't change in size, but we notice that the whole profile moves along the xy plane. Therefore, the position of this profile along the x direction and the y direction is not defined. Therefore, we can add a ground constraint, for instance in the midpoint, a ground constraint which actually locks that point in that position. Now all entities are displayed in dark blue color, the color of well-defined entities. We can go back to the model environment, apply the linear solid command to sweep the profile by 20, and creating in this way the first solid. Let's save what we have created so far, and let's also end our task.